Hi, my name is Amod. Today we are going to talk about creating mobile apps using serverless architecture. This is a follow-up session. Today we are going to talk about using Firebase as a backend for your mobile apps, how scalable it is, how quickly you can create your mobile apps. We are going to talk about difference between a traditional architecture versus serverless architecture, how to use SQL versus no SQL architecture, and we will have a detailed walkthrough on installing Android Studio to actually testing our apps on a simulator if you don't have a phone. So the links which are shown right now, I'll share them in the video description. You can go and visit them. So what is a serverless architecture? What are its pros and cons? So the benefit of using serverless architecture is you can focus on your application and not on the infrastructure. If you have a great infrastructure team, you can probably skip and go to a traditional architecture of developing the backend. So there are various service providers available: Azure, AWS, IBM, Google. So we today's session will use Google Firebase to create a chat application. The source code is also provided in the link description. You can use AWS Lambda as well. So what is the difference between a traditional and a serverless architecture? The usual traditional is you will have your database and a server. On a serverless architecture, the client logic and third party services are written. The another useful information is the pricing. So one of the major advantage of using serverless is reduces cost. So you don't need to have a server maintenance and a server team to maintain your servers. That can be maintained by the service providers, and you pay as per the time and the resources used. Also, the downside is that the serverless functions are accessed only as a private API. You need to provide an API gateway. Uh, so let's look at what is Firebase. Firebase is a tool set to build, improve, and grow your app. And the tool set gives you cover a large portion of the services that developers would normally have to build themselves, but don't really want to build because they rather be focusing on app experience itself. This includes things like analytics, authentication, databases, configuration, file storages, push messaging, and list goes on. The services are hosted in the cloud and scale with little to no efforts in the part of the developer. So the like in the previous example, also these links I will save them in the uh, video description. So in the traditional way of accessing three-tier application is you have your apps, you have your HTTP API, your servers, the SDK, you have your web server, your database server. On Firebase, you are directly accessing the SDKs, and the Firebase takes care of all your servers, the SDK, the database, the documents, the authentication, and things like that. So there are various services available with Firebase. So for example, authentication. So if you want to integrate your app with user authentication, you want to have restriction on what functionality a user can access, you can have the auth features available. The hosting, you can host your websites there. The machine learning kit is available, the cloud storage is available, and real-time database. Also, the Firebase allows you to improve your app quality by providing crash analytics, performance monitoring, and test labs. So you can run your test on the database itself. Also, it provides you a lot of insights in the analytics. It also gives you prediction. You can send cloud messaging, in-app messaging, config, and dynamic links. So there are a lot of features available, and the documentation tells you how to use them. So what sort of apps are useful for Firebase? There is no limit on types of app that can help by Firebase products. There are only limits to the platform it can be used on. So iOS, Android are the primary targets for Firebase SDKs. So they have increased support for Web, Flutter, Unity, and C++. So the products which we talked earlier is authentication. You can provide user login and identity. The real-time databases, you can have a real-time cloud-hosted NoSQL database available. The Firestore is the new version. It also uh, uses the same technology. You can use cloud storage, massable scalable file storage, cloud function, Firebase hosting, machine learning. So Firebase authentication takes care of getting your users logged in and identify. This product is essential in getting some of the products configured properly. So if you want to have a login based authentication, Firebase provides you that inbuilt support. The Firebase real-time database and Cloud Firestore provide database services. I list them both of them as real-time cloud-hosted NoSQL database. They have individual strengths and weakness, and you may need to do some research to figure out which one is better for you to start. Start with Cloud Firestore as likely addresses more of your needs and it is massively scalable. So the database is real time, it gets synced up. You can have a offline feature, it can work without internet as well, and the data gets sync up as soon as your internet is on. So Firebase hosting is a secure global web hosting CDN content delivery network. It is really good at quickly delivering static content, HTML, CSS, JS images using servers that are close to your users. So you can also use machine learning kit for Firebase. So the lot of features are provided. You can go through this very nicely written article on some of the features that you can integrate. So a lot of time the question is which one to use, whether we should go with NoSQL or SQL database. So the SQL database are the tables with fixed rows and columns, and NoSQL database are basically JSON documents, which are key value pairs, tables, rows, dynamic columns, graphs, nodes, and edges. Example of traditional SQL database are Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, and many more. Examples of NoSQL database are MongoDB, DynamoDB, Amazon Neptune, Firebase, Amazon Lambda. So primary purpose of using traditional SQL database is general purpose. When you should use a NoSQL database, it's a document general purpose key value, large amounts of data with simple lookup queries, wide column, large amounts of data with predictable query patterns, graph, analyzing and traversing relationship between the connected data. Scalable, the traditional SQL database is vertical scalable. However, the NoSQL database is horizontally scalable. Joins are not typically, so if you have a very complicated database structure, recommendation is to go traditional SQL, as the NoSQL database doesn't allow that joins feature that easily. So benefits of using NoSQL database, they are flexible data models. NoSQL database typically have very flexible schemas. It is horizontal scaling, fast queries. Queries in NoSQL database can be faster than SQL database because data in the SQL database typically normalize, and it's very easy for developers. What are the drawbacks? Don't support ACID properties across multiple documents. So if you are looking for a traditional database, then this you can go with the SQL database like MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and if you are looking for a NoSQL database, you can go with the new one. So another great example of the big companies which uses such cloud-based microservices is Netflix. So Netflix is the online subscription video streaming services. It accounts for more than 15% of world's internet bandwidth capacity. In 2019, Netflix acquired over 167 million subscriber with more than 5 million new subscribers added every quarter, and they operate in more than 200 countries. More specifically, Netflix subscribers spend over 165 million hours of watching over 4,000 films and 47,000 episodes daily. This impressive statistics tells us that technical team have designed such an amazing video streaming system that a very high availability and scalability in order to serve their customers globally. So initially, the Netflix had their own infrastructure, but in 2008, after a service outage on the data center, they shut down their entire DVD renting services was down for 3 days. So Netflix realized that it needs more reliable infrastructure with no single point of failure. Therefore, they made two important decisions: migrating to IT infrastructure from its data center to a public cloud, and replacing programs with small manageable software components by microservices architecture. And today Netflix runs on AWS cloud, and they use microservices, no SQL. So you can go through this document to understand how that architecture is, what are the features that they use. So the reason I am sharing this document is, like, companies like Netflix also are nowadays using the uh, cloud enabled serverless architecture, which are instantly scalable based on the requirement. If the data is not being used, you're not charged, you're only charged for what is your usage. So this is a excellent article written how the uh, microservices works with in Netflix. So before you start using Firebase or any serverless cloud architecture, there is no upfront cost. So you don't pay some X amount every year, fix X amount. The amount is based on the amount of usage, how much your application is going to use the data on the cloud. So this is another excellent article on how miswritten code almost caused them a 30K USD bill in a less than 72 hours. So I will share this link in the video description. You can go through details. So in a nutshell, what they were a crowdfunding website, and they were using Firebase as a backend. So their crowdfunding website got a hit, and a lot of people started uh, you know uh, s- giving fundings to their campaigns. The problem was, within a single day, when we access Firebase dashboard, we realized that many visitors and supporters happening on Firestore services were not just overloaded, but they are a huge depth with Google. We spend $30,000 in just 72 hours. So everything we use on cloud is calculated based on your read write. So they have written where exactly it went wrong and why their bill was uh, so high. They reached out to Google, and Google supported them and reverse back their transaction. The benefit of using such serverless architecture is, if you read this line, uh, they also letting us have 2 million sessions, 60 supports per minute, and billions of requests without letting our site go down. So it's instant scalable. So the benefit of using this server is, if you have many users, the users will never face any downtime, and you can instantly grow. But it's very important to understand the billing perspective, because wrong code can easily have a huge amount of bill from these services. So that's the overview of using Firebase as a serverless architecture. Now we'll go through in the more technical depth on how to install Android Studio, and how to set it up quickly without writing a single line of code. How easy it is for you to integrate in your Firebase database. So let's quickly take a look at how to get Android Studio installed and how easy it is to integrate with Firebase. Now, coming back to which architecture should be used, whether it should be serverless or it's a traditional architecture, that is a technical call a architect has to take. My recommendation is to definitely go with the serverless architecture if you're not sure how much scalable your application is going to be, or how the usage or downloads are going to happen. This gives you advantage of not maintaining those server, and it gets scalable instantly. So they have very good benefits of using serverless architecture. On Google you can search for pros and cons, which one to use. So to download Android Studio, you can go to developer.android.com/studio, and it can be installed on Linux, Mac, or Windows. There is a recommended system configuration that you need to have to install it on Windows. For example, if you need to have a 64-bit Windows 7, 8, 10, minimum 4 GB RAM is recommended minimum, but the recommendation is 8 GB if you are going to use the simulator. Now, if you don't have a system that matches the Android Studio recommendation, and if you're going to just try out this system before purchasing a brand new workspace, I definitely recommend trying Amazon Workspaces. This is the one which I'm using right now for this demo. You can on the cloud you can rent out a desktop as a service. Uh, you can have multiple desktops, and a lot of features are available. So this demo is created using Amazon Workspace. So let's start. You can click on download Android Studio. Download Android Studio for Windows. Save file. And if you don't have actual device to test, that is okay. This demo will cover how to deploy it on a simulator, the application which we are going to try today. Also on the firebase console, so you can register yourself with console.firebase.google.com. Give your credentials if you are registering as an individual or a company, and you can create your projects here for the backend. So the download is complete, so let's run this setup. So I'm going to use the default settings. So if you have a previous install Android Studio on a different machine, you can import those settings here. So right now, let's say do not import settings. So setup development environment, create new application. You can customize the install setting. So JDK. You can use the light or dark theme. If you want, you can install the virtual devices that we are going to use and API 10. So we are going to use it on D drive. So next, let's use the recommended simulator settings and click on finish. So far we have set up Android Studio. We have our emulator is also up. It takes some time to boot the emulator. You might want to try different devices as well. Now let's build a project. So Google has given a sample code lab friendly chat application. The complete source code is available on GitHub. So the URL is github.com/firebase/codelab friendly chat Android. And what we are going to do is implement this along with the Firebase project to see the end-to-end application. So the first step is to get the code. So you can click on code, say download zip. Once you have your zip available, you can extract it. So here they have given two tutorials, build friendly chat code lab and grow friendly chat code lab. So today in this training we are going to use the build friendly chat code lab. You can play around with the this one, grow friendly chat code lab, on the same code base. So click on this build Android Code Lab. So it opens up a new URL, codelabs.developers.google.com. So the end application is this, the friendly chat. There are different users who are communicating with each other using Firebase database. You can upload images and a lot of things you can do here. So you need to have Android Studio, sample code, a simulator, or if you have a real device, you can use that device to test your application. So step one is to get the sample code, which we have already done. Use the build Android stat. Now let's hit next. So import the starter app. So step one is to launch Android Studio. So it opens up your project within Android Studio. So once you've done that, click next. So the important step is create Firebase console project. So add Firebase to the project. Go to Firebase console, select add project, select the name of the project, follow the remaining steps in the Firebase console. So go back to console.firebase.google.com. Once you have set up your account, you can come here and add a new project by clicking add project. Start with the name of your project. So you can give the project name as Firebase code lab chat, and you can say continue. So you can add analytics into your Firebase project. So if you don't want, you can disable it or enable it. So once you enable it, hit continue, then select Google Analytics account, do default account, or you can create a new account for your analytics. Hit next and it starts creating a project. So it says your project is complete. You can hit continue, go back to your tutorial, hit next. So from the overview section, click the Android icon to launch the setup workflow. So once your project is done, you can see on the left hand side you have project overview, you have developed, quality, analytics, grow, a lot of options available. You can play around with that. What we are going to do is we are going to add an Android project. So click on the Android action. Now add the Android package name. So in this case, we are using the existing project. So we are going to copy this friendly chat, go back to your firebase project and add the package name. Application nickname optional. Add your signing certificate. In case if you are going to use Google Auth, which we are going to use in this project, you need to provide a signing certificate so that the firebase can authenticate the application. So to get SHA1 for your signing key store, if you are using a standard key debug key store, use the following command to get the SHA1 key. Now, if you this is for debug key store. So if you have, when your application is ready to be launched, you need to follow the same steps for your release mode as well. So instead of running this command prompt, what you can do is go to Android Studio, click on Gradle, select your project, click task, click Android, and double click on the signing report. So it runs in the console. You can see it executed the debug key store and it generated this SHA for you. So you can control C, go back to Firebase, add the debugging certificate and click register app. After that, the next thing is to download the config file. So your application can connect to your project. You can click on download Google services.json. It save file. It says switch to project view and your app, the services JSON should be listed here. So you can go to your download file. So the file was generated. Hit Control C. Go back to your project. Build Android start app and paste your Google services JSON here. So once you go back, you can go to your project and take a look at the file google services.json which is just added. So it has a bunch of information, your project URL, project ID, the storage bucket name, if you are going to use files, your client information, name of the package, and a lot of other information is available here. So go back to Firebase console, click next. This is to add the Firebase SDK within your Android project. Since we are using a ready-made project, this is already been done. You can go to Android Studio and take a look at those. Switch your project to Android. Go to Gradle scripts, and then you can take a look at the packages that are being used. So hit next and it waits for your app verification. So go back to the tutorial. So click add Google Services JSON to application, which we did. Add Google Services plugin to app. The Google Services plugin uses the Google Services JSON file to configure application to use Firebase. The following line should be already added to the end of build.file in the app directory of your project. Click to confirm. So go back to your build.gradle and here it is. The plugin is already listed. So sync your project with Gradle files to make sure that all dependencies are available to your app. You should sync your project with Gradle files at this point. So go back to your Android Studio and click on sync project. So it gives two error. It says the project uses Android X dependency, but the Android X use Android X property is not enabled. So in order to fix this error, you need to go to your Gradle properties. So you need to turn it to true. Click that true. Hit save and do a sync project again. And this should solve all the errors. So build is successful. That's great. So let's move to the next step. So run the starter app. So we have done as per the instructions. Now all we need to do is the run this project. So make sure your application, your simulator is running. And from here select your app and click on run app. So it will start running again. You can take a look at the progress, what is happening. If there are any errors, you need to resolve them. And once the compilation and everything is done, the app will be installed on your simulator. So right now it's installing. So while this comes up, so let's say if you don't have a simulator, or if you want to uh, test it on a real device, Google Device Farms allows you to launch a new phone, and you can test your app on a real device as well. So for example, uh, you can select Google Pixel 3 and confirm and start session. So this app is installed. So let's go back to your tutorial to see. Now you imported the project into Android Studio and configure plugin with your JSON file. You are ready to run the app for the first time. Connect your Android device and click run. The app should launch on your device. At this point you should see an empty message list, and sending and receiving message will not work. In the next section you authenticate users, so they can use the friendly chat. So like in this demo, this application is there, but there is no login and anything. So in order to fix that, what can do is enable authentication. All right, so this is a real phone on a Google device farm. So sorry, on a AWS device farm. You can upload your APK here. So click on upload. Make sure the time is correct. Click open. So APK is uploaded. Why didn't upload? So click on upload again. Processing. So we'll revisit this again, but you to get an idea, you can upload your APK uh, on a real device, and you can actually test it on a real device as well. Check the pricing for the charges for using device farm. So let's go back to code lab. So enable authentication. Let's require a user to sign in before reading or posting any friendly chat messages. So firebase real-time database rule. Access to your firebase database configured by set of rules written in a JSON configuration language. So we once your app is ready, you can go to real-time database and say create database. So there are two modes available, start in locked mode and start in test mode. So here if you see, the rules are read is equal to false, write is equal to false. So we are going to start in locked mode. Go back to your database and configure these rules. Go back to, so this is the data which your chats will appear here. Go back to rules and click on publish. So it says your security rules are not secure. Any authenticated user can steal, modify, or delete data in your database. So click on learn more to understand how you can make your data more secure. So right now, any authenticated user can read any rules, any data within your database. So this is done. Now configure the authentication API. So navigate to Firebase console, click on authentication. So authentication is the list of users who can access your database. Click on sign in method. So they can use a lot of available options. They can authenticate via email, phone, Facebook, Apple, or anonymous. So for our project, we are going to use Google authentication. So you are going to enable it. Here it says support email address, which is your default email address assigned on your Firebase console, or you can have your different email address as well, and click on save. So now your authentication is enabled. Now go back to your project setting, add the Firebase authentication implementation, and open main activity.java. So copy this code, go back to your Android Studio, click on app, Java, in activity.java. So add this code on create method. What it does is it prompts user to authenticate via Google authentication method. So go back to your code. After on create and username, paste this code, remove all the errors, import class. Give a user option to log in and log out from your code. Now go to sign in activity, copy this code, import class, click on create, initialize the Firebase. Just after the sign in button code. So use a sign in method on click. Sign in, use the sign in class. implement the on activity results. So once a user is authenticated by Google, it returns you the token. Make sure all the errors are resolved. These are the missing uh, class. So firebase auth with Google. So one more method is missing. Here it is. Copy. Make sure there are no errors here as well. Class. Class. Google provider. Class. Alright, so all the errors are resolved. You have updated the code. That's it. You have implemented authentication core using Google as an identity provider in just a few methods called, and without needing to manage any server-side configuration. So this is as simple as making your app authenticated with Google Firebase. Now run the app on your device. You should immediately send to the sign-in screen. So once all the errors are resolved, just click launch. So here sometimes the APK upload doesn't work. You can stop your session and start a new simulator if you want. So let's go back to Android Studio. So it's installing the new app. So as you see here, the sign in button is now enabled. So this is a simulator. You will not be able to test your sign in, but on a real device, you can actually use your Google authentication to authenticate to sign in into an app. The moment you sign in, you will start seeing your users here. You will start seeing whatever data the users are entering on this database page. So if you want to import read messages, click on the database on the select real-time database options. If you are presented with database creation, please select real-time database. On the overflow menu on the data tab, select import JSON. Browse to initial message JSON file at the root of cloned repository and then select it and click import. So if you go back to your database, click here, say import JSON, say browse, so downloads, initial messages, it will say all data will be overwritten. So this is the messages which are created by anonymous users with their IDs. So this is a sample application. So if you run your application, you will start seeing this within your database. So if you want to synchronize it, you can copy this code, which will synchronize your messages. So just by following this simple test steps, your application is ready to uh, integrate with the firebase, read database, write database. But it's very important you understand the billing details. So if you go back to your firebase, click on the see full plan details, and you can see the firebase uh, charges. So it's a pay as you go plan, there is no recurring fees. So authentication, there are 10K per month free available. On top of that, you will be charged zero point 0.1 verification. So for real time, so if you are using storing a database, it is 0.026 per GB. Then real-time database simultaneous collection. So 200K database connections are allowed per database instance. GB stored is 1 GB, and additional $5 per GB will be charged. So if you, for every GB downloaded from your database, you will be charged $1 per GB. So it's very important to understand how many calls are made to your database, how many read write happens, because everything is as I said earlier in the start of this video. Uh, Take a look at the example of the 30K billing which happened to them within a 24 hours or something. So if you go back to best database, so similarly they have given example of how to send messages, read messages, and try the grow friendly chat, how to grow your application with just build. So you can see active user, understanding user flow, report crashes, remote configure. If you want to push messages to user, you can do that, and test your app in the cloud. So you can write your test cases and test it on the uh, cloud available within the firebase. So our law app, which uses the exact same real-time database, we have a lot of concurrent user using the application without any facing any issues, any downtime. So I'll highly recommend using uh, Firebase real-time database within your application. So if you have any suggestion, feedback, please do write to us. We'll be happy to hear from you. And please like our YouTube channel. Thank you.